Absolutely.
I take them out at night. My wife tries to tell me something.
I have a question.
Oh, my God.
Then. Manufactured. Home. And they can do that several times, you, them. Twelve or 1.0.
He's got two guns.
Yeah.
He's going stereo.
But you have standard time. Like.
Oh, looks like Monica on
Thought that was
she's logging in on the.
Can you hear us, Monica?
You swore they didn't know.
supposed to be referenced.
And that's supposed to reference, but the sections in the,
You don't need.
We are not on mute.
in the manufactured housing standard act. Is the entire. Well, time.
That is.
This meeting is being recorded.
Can you hear us? Yes, no? Assume she can hear us.
Can you guys hear me? I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Okay.
Oh, there she.
Yeah, she can be muted for now. Okay. Okay, the time is now 6:31. We are in session. Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Sandy Oaks, Texas will be held on Thursday, June 26, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. at City Hall, 22870 Priest Road, Sandy Oaks, Texas, where a quorum of the City Council will be present. All agenda items are subject to action. You could join the meeting at the Zoom link found in the agenda on the website. The public will be permitted to offer public comments in person, telephonically, or by audio as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting by signing up with the city secretary at least 15 minutes in advance of the meeting, if providing comments in person, and at least 2 hours in advance of the meeting by emailing the city secretary or by calling 210-607-0834 if speaking telephonically or by audio. An audio recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Texas Public Information Act upon written request. At this time, Madam Secretary, may I have a call to order and a quorum call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Madero,
Present.
Alderwoman J.C.J. Walker,
Not here.
Alderman Tremblay,
Here.
Alderman Winter,
Here.
Alderman Lapino,
Here.
City Attorney is present, and City Secretary is also here. We're all here.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Citizens to be heard. People wishing to speak may sign up with the city secretary in the time and manner indicated above. At this time, we do have Mr. Terry Reagan. Did you want to speak in your agenda item? Do you want to speak right now?
Yes, the agenda item, like.
It's up to you.
Here for y'all.
It's up to you. You tell me. You signed up here, so I can let you go here, or if you want to wait until your agenda item.
Appreciate that. Probably just wait till the agenda. item.
Okay. Then next we have Jose Sabero. ¿Sí? ¿Listo? Okay, tengo 2 minutos, ¿sí? Or 3 minutos.
Buenas tardes.
Bueno, al frente, por favor.
Buenas tardes. Un gusto estar acá. Quería ver si me daban la oportunidad, el permiso.
I can talk
Yeah.
about afterwards. That's gonna be what
Yeah.
we talked about as far as the road goes. Ahorita hablo con ustedes para decirle que.
Oh,
Well, let him go.
you gonna transfer?
Yeah,
Yeah, he said he came because he wanted to know if they were gonna let him do his business on that road. Remember, it's the commercial road.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty-
okay, so, yeah, then you can take that.
Yeah, I'll talk.
Okay.
Ahorita hablo con ustedes.
Okay,
Okay,
gracias.
gracias. All right. Moving right along, there is nobody else signed up for citizens to be heard. Moving to mayor and administrator announcements. No announcements at this time to speak of. So we'll just continue to move forward. All right, consent agenda, all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the city, by the city council of the city of Sandy Oaks and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If a discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. To Mayor Pro Tem, I know you sent me some updates and they were incorporated in the physical version presented in the council meeting today in the consent agenda. So you may not have it, but we have the most current version of it.
Yeah, I have a few items in the June 12 minutes. That basically spelling or corrections.
Okay, so then let's make a motion to withdraw agenda item A, 5A.
Right.
I second that motion.
I move to remove item A from the consent agenda for further discussion.
Okay. All right, I got a motion by Alderman Tremblay and a second by Alderman Rapino to withdraw item 5A from the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed. All right.
If there are no other issues with B through D, I move that we approve the consent agenda
As amended.
as amended.
Yes. Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Alderman Rapino and a second by Alderman Fillinger to approve consent agenda 5B, C, and D. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right.
You want to take the changes, okay?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. On the June 12th regular meeting minutes, on item 3, on the second paragraph on item 3 where it says Mr. Terry Reagan bought pictures should be brought. Yeah, I will just do all the corrections and go with one motion.
And then one
That's fine.
motion, yeah, that's fine.
Next page under item 10. On the 4th line down where it says tables die to stickers, table do. Remove die and replace with the do, DUE.
Well, what agenda item is up? Are these?
The one in the package, sir. The one in the package.
Okay, is that done already then?
I have do, yeah.
Do,
Yeah.
okay, I have die, okay,
Although the brought is one that wasn't taught.
Well, was it caught?
well, let me, I have these circled, so. Under item 12. C, A, B, C, D, wait a second, it's not right. Okay, I have item 12, admin, new business. And it goes from 12D, okay, 12E. Under 12E, and this is just a picky one on myself, my name is misspelled. So, where it says motion, under item 6E, the motion.
Under 12A?
Yes, 12C,
12C,
12E, I'm sorry,
12E, okay.
12E. you folks there, under the motion, first motion. Should be BLAY.
Got it.
And then if you go a little further down, city attorney is recommending October 21 at ordinance.
Yep.
Alderman Tremblay again, but stick an A in there.
Gotcha.
But I don't like you, do it?
That's all I have unless somebody else has something.
Did you correct the misspelling of the name in 12H?
H.
Well, A,
H is in hotel. That was a comment I sent to the mayor on Monday.
I see Tremblay is fixed and Rapino is,
Okay. Again, I don't have the hard copy. I only
Gotcha.
have what you emailed on Monday, so I apologize.
yeah, no, you're good.
So
Okay,
we're gonna make a motion to,
motion to approve consent agenda item A.
Well, we need a motion to approve those edits you just recommended, sir.
Yeah, excuse me, move to approve the amendments to item A, minutes for June 12th.
I'll second.
all right, I got a motion by Alderman Tremblay and a second by Alderman Rapino to approve the amendments to the consent agenda. If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right. We'll get that presented. All right, so let's move right along to agenda item 6.
Wait, Mayor, that was just to approve the edits. It wasn't to approve
Ah,
to
Gotcha,
approve it as part of the consent agenda.
gotcha, you're right. Okay. So then now I do need a motion to approve the consent agenda. After we approve the amendments.
I move to approve the consent agenda. Item A.
I'll second that motion.
No,
Okay.
that's what we're saying.
I have a motion from Alderman Fillinger and a second by Alderman, Mayor Pro Tem to approve the consent agenda 5A item, regular meeting minutes for the June 12th, 2025 regular city council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed. Okay. All right. Now we can move along. Personnel policy, I believe that was going to be discussed in July, but Alderwoman CJ is not here either. So are we okay to just move along?
So just so you know, she did finish the restructuring of everything and sent that to me a couple days ago. So now I'm going to review it and all of her tracked comments, and then we'll share it with Jeremy and should have that. We're still on track to have that at one of the July meetings, sir.
Okay. So as far as note taking, I have it as the restructure is complete and we plan to present in July.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Update on property improvement plan provided by property owner, residential address 3807 Waterwood Pass, San Diego, Texas, 78112. Mr. Reagan, you do have the floor.
Thank you again, City Council. It's always, it's an honor to be here. That y'all have been working with me on this, and I appreciate that very much. We had a little bit of a mishap this last week, so things were a little slowed down. We had a theft, had to deal with that. So, but if it wasn't for that, we probably would have had the house down already. So should be within the week. We'll have the house down and the fence started. So just want to let y'all know. Questions or concerns?
No questions or concerns at this time.
Right.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Mm.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Okay, moving on to the next item, 6C, discussing a possible action on additional streetlights in San Diego, Texas, based on the map provided by CPS Energy. The map to the right, Mayor Pro Tem, you're unfortunately not able to see it. But our Public Works Director was able to complete her run through the city. It's certainly lit up like a Christmas tree. And so at this time, I think not at this time, but I think we now need to come back to it with that's her recommendation on where we lack lights. There was a total of how many that you recommended?
like 142.
142 at $10 a piece. Is that correct? Okay, so 142 at a $10 a piece, that's $1,420 additional monthly in light cost that we would expect. So obviously we would need to come back and just kind of start dissecting it and see really where we want to emphasize some new lighting. But I think there's still time has to be made for that. I don't think we could do it in a meeting. I think we do need to have like an executive session or a committee meeting or something like that, where two people get with our public works director and maybe discuss like where should we cut? Because I certainly know we can't afford an additional $15,000 annually for our light bill. But not to say they're not necessary, because it certainly is a lack of lighting, but we just got to do it incrementally.
Do those include the recommendations from the police department as well, sir?
Yes, whatever they provided it is included into the.
He said no.
Can
No?
you provide a photo of that via email later, sir?
Can you do what now?
Can you provide a photo? Just
Yes.
take a picture with your phone and email that to me so I can have that to start looking at, and include the scale of the distance that's on that picture, sir.
Of course.
I think everybody should have.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any discussion?
Just that we all should have that. You can email.
You want the
it to
whole-
all of us.
everybody? Yep.
Yeah, so I think it'd be, rather than sitting here trying to look at it.
Okay, got it. All right. Anything else, Charles? Okay, then let's move right along. Let's see here, discuss under possible action on ordinance 2021-181 Citizen Complaint Review Board. Mayor Pro Tem, you do have the floor if you are able to speak to it today.
No, I would just ask whether anyone was able to come up with any additional recommendations of citizens for that, because that's what we're missing at this point. We do have the alderperson and the police officer and city employee that we need on the committee, but we are short that one civilian because we made Alderwoman Walker the city council rep. So any recommendations from anyone? I do not have anyone that I'd like to recommend, but just asking if any other council members or you, Mayor, have a recommendation.
You're including Mr. Jones as a citizen?
I'm sorry,
Are you
Mr.
including
David Jones.
David Jones in your assessment of the members? Because he is on the board, he's been sworn in.
Right. So based on what we appointed at a previous meeting where we identified the previous mayor pro tem as the alderperson, at that point in time, we had to revisit it. Anyone that was appointed at that time is still on there. So as far as I'm concerned, the only one we're missing is a civilian to replace Alderwoman Walker, because she's no longer a civilian, a citizen. She is now the alderperson.
Okay. Gotcha.
I did speak to a few people, and they were gonna recommend their brother-in-law or brother, but they were supposed to be here today, did not show, so we can continue to search far and wide. I can go ahead and also post it on Nextdoor to see if anybody can get some traction on wanting to be a part of the Citizen Complaint Review Board.
Yes, sir. And I would request that we keep this on the agenda under the unfinished business until we identify that last civilian so that we have a complete review board, sir.
And four. Any additional questions or comments or any recommendations? Okay, then we will keep it on unfinished business. Okay, moving along to agenda item 12E, I do have a doc to share, so give me 1 second. All right, David, you do have the floor, and Alderman Bellinger, sorry. Alderman
Okay.
Tremblay,
I did bring this up at the last meeting, but I did want to get some input and support from the animal control officer. I just see the conditions of the shelter as rapidly deteriorating. We definitely have to invest some money into this building if we're going to continue using it. Can we go full screen on these pictures?
I'm trying to
Is there
figure out how to
anybody-
do that.
Is it a PowerPoint? What is it?
No, it's just a Microsoft Word
Oh,
document. So there should be. Let's see here. That's as full screen as it gets.
Okay, if you can, maybe you can,
Can try to zoom too.
yeah. If you can address, Ashley, if you could just pinpoint exactly the locations of these pictures and what the result is of the current situation, what the, yes, you can, sure.
Okay, so in these pictures here, they show the facility out in the back. This is where we keep the dogs. And the conditions of it are rapidly deteriorating, even though Public Works has on several occasions repaired the facility. They have done a really good job of stretching our budget and trying to make it work. However, the dogs that we bring in are not, they're not, most of the time, they're not tamed. Most of the time they are either feral or they're not used to being contained. And they are eating the facility. They are fighting through fencing. If you scroll on here, you could see where water and stuff is draining on the ground. This is an area here that even though Public Works mows and everything, they do a really good job at keeping it maintained. However, on occasion, the grass does get really high. And we have a hard time crossing right there because there's a lot of water and things that go onto the ground. And we can't have that. So
I'm gonna have him go, just scroll through the pictures, and if you can just identify the area
Okay.
and the cause, maybe.
So right here is the edge of the building. This is the very last kennel on the, if you're looking at the facility from the backside, it is the very last kennel on the left. The water comes through this little crack here. We have put this board here to, or I mean, this plexiglass here to try and eliminate the water going on the ground. However, it still gets through the cracks. Here, this trash can is about knee high. Me and Cassandra here, we have to step up about this high into the building, and it is a fall risk. It does make it to where when we step out, we're stepping out real far down, and we have to bring the dogs in through this door or to the on the outside of the building, and that is the same height. So I just use the trash can as a height reference. On this kennel here, you can see that the water is coming from this kennel here, and it is traveling to this kennel here, even though we have drains here in the back. That is a very big concern for the spread of disease. And it does spread things like worms, bacteria, parvo viruses, distemper, things like that can be spread from this dog to this dog. There's no barrier here, and the water just goes, even though we do have drains. Here, this is just a picture up close of where things come together. You can see here that there is feces all in the little holes here, even though we have a brush that we can clean it, and it is rusting. So that eventually will rust out and become a hazard for me and Cassandra here, if we cut ourselves on the fence.
And is that common throughout, or is that one particular?
No, that's almost every kennel has the rust on it.
Okay.
Here, this is a good example of, even though we have a partition, this is the quarantine kennel. This is the kennel that has, it's the only one that has this board in between this kennel and the kennel before it. You can see here that the seal, even though it has the thing all the way across, that the water is coming through the seal on the bottom.
Is there a seal on the bottom?
There is a seal on
A
the
rubber
bottom.
gasket.
It's like a caulking almost. It's underneath the whole entire thing. I guess it came prefabricated that way,
Yeah.
but it is coming through the bottom.
Seems like the building's unlevel.
It may have
Down
been.
there.
It is unlevel.
Sorry.
Whenever we're having to squeegee the water to get it to the drain.
It runs
You can
left to right.
see a big old puddle and whenever you push it, it comes back.
Okay.
And it's even though like we've attempted to fix it, it's still,
Yeah.
it comes off when we're scrubbing and cleaning.
May I address?
Yes, sir.
I think we need to, have a council workshop at the animal control facility and get some eyes on, and then bring it back to a public meeting for discussion. I'm sure our attorney can tell us how to have a workshop and not violate anything. So just initially looking, looks to me like we need to take all those dividers out and put masonry between the things, which could possibly, I'm not remembering the details, but that could possibly replace the upright post. So we would have to put, and you could do that with a 4 by 8 by 6-inch masonry unit. That could replace the upright posts that are being eaten out. And then the only place we would have chain link would be on the outside edge. The flooding, it looks like we need to put a ditch with a catch basin and a trash pump to move that water into the septic. Well, actually the trap before the septic.
Right.
Leveling it up, I think we could find somebody to do that fairly simply. But again, I think I appreciate the pictures, but I think we need to get eyes on.
I would just like to, and I've seen the pictures, I've been out there and seen the conditions. I think we need to take the advice of the animal control officer as far as what repairs need to be done. I know we could throw a ton of money at this building and it's still not going to be right.
Right.
It's just not
Well,
intended for the purpose we're using it for.
ultimately, if we're going to use that dog, we should maybe convert it to a cattery because it's not a dog compound.
But
And again, eyes on would tell the story. But in the meanwhile, we have to do something to
Towards
be
it.
able to operate.
right, and our public works director, I think, has been instrumental in trying to at least, make some repairs. But I think at this point, it's an issue that's dollar driven. So that's why I'm suggesting we move some money over to the ACO budget so that they can afford to purchase the things they need, and fine if our public works can do the actual labor. Let's buy them the materials or give them the funds they need to purchase the supplies and that they need to get this thing up and running. you know, you mentioned like the water flowing off the deck and going on the ground, some type of a drainage, maybe they could do, fabricate, some type of a gutter with a cover over it that can carry that water down to that, drain that's available prior to the septic. But, I'd just like to give them the tools they need to make it first safer, the entryway going into the building, you know, that high of a step. Surely we can, build a ramp. And so we need to start addressing these issues before they start getting to be bigger issues. If we have an injury because of that step, or we have, I don't know, some all of a sudden, all these dogs are getting sick when they're getting brought in, and it's being caused by the runoff from kennel to kennel. So just like to see some type of attempt for the council to give the ACO some funding.
Do we have any estimates or any quotes on what it's going to take or how we propose to fix this up? Or are we going to propose to replace it? I mean, before we can transfer funds, we need an idea of how much money we're talking about so we can try and figure out where those funds should come from.
We need to figure out what we need to do before we can figure out what kind of funds we need, so.
So I have preliminary, research where I've tried to figure things out. However, I didn't know if we needed a whole new building, or if this building was what I was gonna have to work with.
So I will say it's what you have to work with now, right? So we need to come up with a way to get it functional, right? Not so much compliant, but operational, right? And then we tackle the bigger picture of, is this the right building? To what Charles said and what I told you earlier, right? I think it's a good building. It's not meant for what we're doing, but for the cats, right? If we're gonna do a TNR, this may be the perfect opportunity to revamp that for that. But we still need to have an ability to have dogs until we can figure out the long-term solution. So
A lot of times, I know this can be fixed, but it's something that I think Ms. Cassandra would have experience with as well. And when it rains, like in this picture here, when it rains, the water goes directly down our backs. Like pours off the roof.
yeah, so it just needs a gutter.
So,
gutter.
I mean, there's a
Well,
lot.
and not only that, I'm sorry, I'm Cassandra, Animal Control. May I speak?
Yeah.
Okay, so not only that, I'm out there, or we're out there, we're scrubbing on the outside of the kennels where the fencing is. And we're literally, say this is the gate, that's the kennel. You're literally standing in grass, mud, feces, and it's gross. And then we have water boots, but half the time they don't even work. You know, you're getting water in the boot or whatever.
Would a concrete walkway,
There's no concrete walkway on the outside.
would a concrete walkway fix that?
It would just transfer the,
It would have to be a little high. So that way if it's raining, it would have to run off instead of us walking in that too.
a
Or have
sidewalk is just gonna transfer the mess. Further out, you still have
Or have a
the
gutter
same mess.
on the outside and have a walkway, have a gutter on the
See,
outside.
these are the kinds of things that we need your suggestions and a cost to correct it or to address it. And whether you can work with Public Works, find local contractors. I mean, because this is pretty much coming down to it's contractor work. I mean, there's a builder, somebody does that type of work. So we're not gonna find someone who just builds dog kennels.
What I'm concerned about is that, it's gonna cost more to fix this building than it would to potentially get a quote for something that's, I think we might end up thinking more into this building, trying to get it right because it's not constructed for what we're doing. So we're having to take this building and change the entire building to suit us, where we could possibly have something else.
And,
in
and that's
place.
not gonna happen, it won't happen this fiscal year, and it may not happen next fiscal year. That's what I'm saying. We need to try and do what we can with what we have. If it
Can we
costs,
get a couple quotes from a couple of our local contractors?
Right, if it costs
We've got several.
$3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to get this repaired, put gutters, put drain, fix all
I know,
the.
but we've got no idea unless we get the quotes. And at the same
Exactly.
time, Ashley can
Sure.
look and see what
List
kind
your
of buildings she
problems
can
and
find.
then figure out what it's gonna cost to fix each of them.
Exactly.
And
But, you know, I mean, I'm sure the rest of the council, you know, wants to help you, get you the right facility. Let me rephrase that, get you a safe facility. But I know we cannot, you know, we can't afford to a new facility. So if you could work on that, get the priorities as far as, you know, what's number one, number two, and you may be able to pump all the woodworking part. You know, what can you do? Can we put sheet metal on these corners to prevent the scratching and biting? Come up with some ideas like that. And I mean, while we're getting close to year end here, I'd like to see us, you know, go ahead and commit some year end funds and address it to the facility.
But we can't do any of that without any kind of quotes or estimates, because right
Exactly,
now we're
right.
just
That's
throwing
what
out their ideas. We need to get some contractors to give us some quotes. And Ashley can go look and see what kind of building, kind of quotes you can get on a new facility too, and we can compare with whatever funds we find at the end of the year. But we need some solid numbers before we can talk about giving money to ACO.
I agree.
If I could make a suggestion,
Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to meet with, Ashley and, our public works director Monday morning. And let's go walk that thing. I have an immediate solution to the drainage issue there. And then we can look at what else needs to be done. A ramp would not be a problem. Leveling the building to allow the drains to work properly would not be a problem. Attaching a gutter to the building would not be a problem. And I'm thinking we can address those three issues for a few $1,000s.
They have a building fund too, right? Like, so they have a facility maintenance fund.
Yeah.
And I want to say we haven't used.
Yeah, I mean, I
Much
looked
of
at the
it.
budget, there's quite a few.
And then
Yeah,
we
so we don't need to move money right now.
No,
We just gotta get
look
the
at-
quote.
no, what we need to do to make this last for another year.
Yeah.
And then look at some long-term planning for an actual dog facility. This is a breeder's facility. It's not a containment for feral
Yes.
and stray dogs.
We have had, quite a few dogs that
Yeah.
have ripped up the chain link, gone into the fence and taken off. Even though we have fencing all the way around.
Yes. But that would be my suggestion. I don't see how we're going to do anything else tonight. I mean, we can say we'll use your maintenance budget, but let's take a look at what we need to do and how we can budget it.
I did want to point out these specific pictures since you scrolled by them.
Let me turn it off then.
These dogs here were very, very aggressive. And this particular dog was from me to the table, was only a couple feet away. I know y'all were talking about fixing the building and stuff. But this was a huge safety issue for me. I was by myself and this dog jumped and was hanging on the fence, trying to bite me in the face. And there was no room for me to get back away from the dog, because if you scroll down and you look here, right here, there is no room in between the kennel where the door is and the wall. It's very, very narrow. Like you were saying, it's a breeder's facility. It's not meant for what we're doing. So me being by myself, I stepped back against the wall and took the picture of the dog, like, oh my God, this dog tried to eat me.
And so maybe it's a matter of shortening because they're not supposed to be there forever. So shortening that part internal inside,
It's
Or that
only a
gives-
4x4.
then make it a 2x4, right? Or
Very
whatever it
good.
is.
No,
It's a dog that's not supposed to be there very long.
And you
Not supposed to be
can't-
comfortable.
well,
at a
no,
hotel.
no, that dog got euthanized after 3 days.
Right. But my point is that it doesn't need to be a 4x4, right? It needs to be something smaller to where you and your staff have room to work inside there, right? So that means shortening, pushing those fences back, push them back.
I mean, I
Sure.
don't think that that's possible.
And they have an outdoor, why not?
Because this dog here, if you look here on her feet,
Uh-huh.
she's already almost at the wall. There's no room. Even
No,
if she's
no.
on all fours for
Yeah.
her to stand, there's no room.
So then it'll go outside. I mean, I
If you could, just go down a little bit. If you could show one of the kennels, the chain link kennels,
do I have one?
you do. Let's go back up. It's up.
Is it at the top?
Right there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's more wide than it is long. Okay.
Is you cannot shorten this because this is a solid, this is a fence, this is a panel, basically. If you move this back towards this outlet for this dog, you can't shorten this panel. There's a lot of reconstruction for making that panel smaller, making this basically
No,
this kennel
But
smaller.
you can, but it is more wide than it is long. So then it wouldn't work because it would make it really short for them. I thought there was more room there, so.
No.
But you could, it wouldn't cut a pole and cut the fencing and put it back together. But anyways, nonetheless, it's not gonna work, so, okay.
And we've already purchased gutters for this animal control facility.
For the
Sure.
roof,
No, for outside.
For the floor where we talked
Yes.
about
But
the
the-
wires coming.
but it wouldn't work, right? Because it's
a
it's
trip
2x4s.
And
It's
it's only
two-
when you're spraying the kennels from one kennel to another outside, it wasn't so, because if you go outside and you see the facility, it stands up every bit about 2.5, 3 feet tall. The building is too tall for anybody to be working in and out of it. You have to step into the facility and step out of the facility. It's a safety issue all the way around. A pole. If you look at the outs, there's another picture on here. I think you scrolled past it. But this, you see how it has a pole here? It has the same kind of pole on the outside. So you're having to step, not only are you stepping up in there, you're stepping over that pole. And when you're putting a dog that never's had a leash on, it's jerking you around, throwing you around. You're having to step up in there to get that dog up into the facility, and that pole. You see how this pole is right here?
Which one?
Right here. Oh. Here,
Right?
right here. You can see it on kind of a little bit through the picture here.
Yeah, frame.
You're having to step over that and up into here with a dog that has never been handled, leashed, any of that stuff. So when you're stepping back to get out of it and close the gate really quickly, that can catch the back of your boot here and you'll fall.
So correct me if I'm wrong, in this picture, is the floor 2x4s or is it a solid surface?
It is not solid.
Okay, so then a gutter, I mean, while we do have some pooling there, that's probably because everything's filled into the seams. A gutter typically wouldn't work anyways, because it would fall through the cracks, right?
Yes, the water goes through here and,
So I mean, the gutter on the
Probably
floor is not gonna,
spraying out underneath. They come sometimes when they spray out underneath to get it to, cause it
Yeah.
starts to smell.
yeah.
So the water just drains through here, it pours out here, goes under the building, cause there's I guess it's for leveling, I'm not sure, there's stuff
And
under there.
that's why the building isn't level, the drainage is going under the building, that's.
Yeah.
Loosening the support,
footing.
it's getting soft, so.
And like this picture here, this little bolt is just barely into the wood here. And that's all that's holding this panel in between this kennel and this kennel. And if a dog really wants to get to the other dog,
Those
will.
are the types of things I think need to be addressed now, so stuff like that needs to be secure, I mean, we shouldn't be waiting. Can you work with Priscilla, if she has some leads, whatever, some local, you can take someone and just show them your concerns and get an estimate and we'll bring it back, next week.
I think we need a prioritized estimate. I mean, I think she needs to prioritize what she'd like to have done and get an estimate. I don't think anyone on the council disagrees that we need to get the work done. But I think we need some numbers and identify what she wants to do first. and then get after it. But without numbers, I don't know that we can do anything. And there's too much to tackle at once unless we're just going out and buying a new building. Let's get a prioritized list, get some cost estimates and get started.
We're convinced
So-
that it needs to be done.
We can leave it at that. I'd move that we, keep this item on the agenda for the next meeting,
Yeah.
or until we can resolve the issues with the, containment facility for, animal control, and ask that the, Public Works and animal control work together to try and get some estimates on the really the top priority items that should be done as far as safety is concerned.
I'll
That's my
second-
motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion is to keep the agenda item on unfinished business until we come to a resolution.
Actually, they did. Bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay.
They just,
All right, so the motion by Alderman Tremblay and a second by Alderman Rapino is to maintain this item on unfinished business or to bring it back to the next regularly scheduled meeting for an update. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed. All right,
And just, if it's gonna cost more than $50,000 in total repairs, that would need to go for bidding, so that may be an agenda item also. If the council needs to
gotcha.
consider that, but.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay. All right, moving on to agenda item 7A, discussing a possible action of ordinance 2023-230, adopting regulations for manufactured homes.
This is the second.
No, this is the first time we're looking at it, yeah. So I think one thing that we've learned is that we likely need a formal appeal process added to this ordinance that will allow for homes of conditions that to be accepted based off of maybe a recommendation from a building engineer, which we do have one by way of BB inspections. That's my first thought. I don't know if anybody else had any other thoughts.
can you expand that?
Yeah.
Okay, when you're saying a repeal. As to what?
So an appeal to the original requirements of the ordinance that it must be 5 model years or newer. So that's the really only that's the driving of it for me. It still does need to have HUD certifications, whether it's a 1992 or a 2024. There are still homes within the city that are likely 1992 that follow under those recommendations. And those HUD certifications haven't been repealed, they just added more.
Well, that, if I may address,
Sure.
okay. The HUD certification, as any other piece of legislation, is amended, added to, parts of repeal. So it's not, it's not a constant.
Right.
However, when you say, well, because it's old, it's no longer a HUD certified manufactured home, is an incorrect statement.
Correct.
The issue to me is, I think 5 years is very stingy on our part. But I will tell you what, some aside to that, okay? My biggest issue with manufactured homes is the midnight delivery and setup. Okay, that is strictly illegal in accordance with state law. Okay, we have the occupational code, although it addresses manufactured homes. The addresses from selling, delivering, and installation of the home. Here's what I have to say. No dealer is gonna sell a crapped out piece of mobile home, or manufactured home. No professional driver is gonna take liability for delivering it. And no professional installer is going to risk his license and accept fines for an illegal installation. I suspect if this ordinance is ever taken to court, we would have a very hard time justifying the 5-year limitation. All the state laws, rules, the Texas Administrative Code, they only address HUD certified manufactured homes. None of the laws address the age. They address what dealers have to do. They address what haulers have to do. They address what installers have to do. And if a manufactured home is legally installed, the installer has to draw a permit from Texas Department of Community Development, whatever. But they have to draw a permit to make an installation. That permit puts in motion a state inspection that the home is legally installed and set up. I think because none of the federal or state laws address ages of the manufactured home, they only address new and used. I think for us to say you can't put a 60-year-old manufactured home here, we could very easily be sanctioned under civil rights violation.
So why don't we just put not an appeal process, but like an ability to say, okay, if it's older than 10 years.
Mayor, if I may.
Well, let me finish. If it's older than 10 years, then we have a third party come do a building inspection on your facility at your cost, and if they deem it fit to travel and fit to install and up to code, it has smoke alarms and what have you, then by way of that inspection, we move forward. Ma'am, you have the floor.
So, Alderman Fillinger mentioned if they're buying it from a dealer. A lot of the older manufactured homes that folks buy aren't coming from a dealer. For example, the individual that we made remove the manufactured home from town last year, he moved the home from his mother's property in town to his own property in town, and we still made him take it out. The gentleman that brought this up again, I thought he bought it from another individual and not from a dealership. So we can't always assume it's coming from a dealership. But I do believe that we should adjust paragraph in section 7D, where we're talking about bringing an appeal to the city council if you're denied, and instead change that to be some sort of exception process like you're talking about. So it doesn't come to an appeal to the council unless his application for an exception is denied. Somehow fit that in there where we have if he files an exception. I don't know who we want to approve that exception, since we don't have a city administrator, we don't have a building inspector, but just someone to validate. Okay, well then, just someone, the the building inspector then to just approve that exception and then have the appeal process kick in if the individual wants to appeal the denial of an exemption.
Right, so if the person tries to move in a 20-year-old home, we say, go get the building inspection. Then at that point, it comes to the administrator. The administrator gets with the building inspector. The inspector says, this home is certified, it can move, it has these safety systems. By our definition, it is okay to move in, or by our definition, it is an okay home, a livable home. Then I think it just avoids the appeal process and it goes straight to approved. Right?
Yes, sir. But should the inspector say no and that individual still want to appeal it, we should provide that option that the exception is denied. And if he disagrees with the building inspector for whatever reason and wants a second opinion, I think the city council should be the second opinion in that case. I just think that appeal process should be in there. But if the city attorney could draft up something similar to what you said to make it part of section 7D, I think that would help alleviate the problems we just ran into with the gentleman that we spoke with last week, at last meeting.
Got you.
Okay. I'm not.
So, I mean, sir, if I could make a motion on that, I would move to have the city attorney draft up that language that you just described for the exception process for section 7, paragraph D of the ordinance 2023-230.
Section
7D.
Permits, inspections and fees.
Correct, because D talks about the appeal process.
Yeah.
So either add it to paragraph D or add it before paragraph D. I would allow the city attorney to recommend how that should be, because that would be an additional inspection that if it doesn't meet this criteria and the individual still wants to bring it in, then they would go to the building inspector and pay for an inspection, and then get the building inspector to make a ruling on it, or the city administrator to make a ruling based on the building inspector's inspection of it. And then we would have the appeal process if the owner disagreed with the building inspector or a city administrator. And the city attorney, I mean, she can say, does it make sense to put it in paragraph D or before paragraph D?
What are your thoughts?
Probably before paragraph D is its own paragraph with an exception process, and then the appeal process be a different procedure.
Well, sir, that's my motion then, is I would move to add a paragraph between paragraph C and D that describes that exception process that involves a building inspector and the city administrator making the decision without involving the city council until we get to the next paragraph, which talks about the repeal.
Do I have a second?
Second,
All right, so I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem and a second by Alderman Rapino to allow our city attorney to draft language between sections C and D to allow for an exemption process as discussed in the meeting, and to bring it back to the next regular scheduled council meeting. Does that sound fair?
That's correct, sir. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Yep,
Aye.
Oh, okay, well, we're voting on this amendment.
on this amendment.
All right.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. Yes, sir. What else did you have to add?
I talked to the attorney earlier about the, in the whereas,
Mm-hmm.
One, two, on the third whereas, the fourth whereas, it addresses the Texas Occupational Code, section 1201.008A. And I found that, and that's lovely. And then it goes to the Texas Manufactured Housing Standard Act, section 4A. The Texas Manufactured Housing Standard Act in its entirety is, oh, where'd it go? It's an entire chapter. Everything in the Texas manufacturing, everything in the chapter 1201 is this. So there's no section 4. Sections are 1201.001, 002 to about, I think, 166. So somewhere in there, there's going to be a paragraph 4A, but I went through several of those sections and I didn't find an applicable 4A. So I'm concerned because that's how we start our ordinance, and it's not an identifiable nomenclature that I can find.
So do we,
So Alderman Fillinger, you're saying we should remove the statement Texas Manufactured Housing Standard Act, Section 4A?
I think section 4A should go, right? The Texas Manufacturing Housing Standard authorizes municipalities to prohibit the future installation of a mobile home. If you narrow it down to 4A, the chapter can be amended and now 4A is no longer 4A.
I think that I found the document that was being referenced. I think
Okay.
it may have been either a summary of a House bill or put out by the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs that summarized that, because this one does have section 1 and section 2. And it is very, it's identical to the occupations codes, but I do agree that striking section 4A, section 4B, because it's not the actual statute. But this is, I believe, the document that was being referenced.
Okay. So we'll just, if we strike section 4B in both of those of section 4A, and we strike section 4B and just reference the Texas Manufactured Housing Standard Act.
Yes.
We're legit.
Yes.
Okay. Then I would move that in the third whereas of the ordinance that we strike section 4A, and in the fourth paragraph beginning with whereas we strike section B.
Do I have a second?
But are you removing both of those whereases, the whole
Yes.
sentence?
No, just the
Just
section
the word
4A.
A.
So,
and 4B.
so the Texas Occupation Code 1201-008, A and B, those are still good.
Yes.
Okay.
Just that 4A and 4B is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Our second.
All right, so I got a motion by Alderman Fillinger and a second by Alderman Rapino to strike in the third whereas where it states section 4A, and in the fourth whereas to strike where it says section 4B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay,
Section 6B.
B is in boy.
B is in boy. Section B is in boy. That's on page 6 of the ordinance, at the top of the page. That all manufacturers shall be installed in compliance with the standards and requirements for the installation and construction of manufactured homes established by the Texas Housing Standard Code, comma, I would like to strike that comma, insert the word and Texas Department of Housing. Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Manufactured housing rules, subchapter B, installation standards and device approval.
You have that written down somewhere?
I do in fact,
Can I see it? I tried to write it down and,
I was going to share it with our attorney.
well, let me just read it out, so that way I get your motion correct.
Okay.
And do I have a second? Sure.
Now you're wanting to add that,
After code,
but he also said strike the comma, but don't we just need to insert between code and comma that statement?
right? It's because it would read Housing Standards Code and Texas Department of Housing, yada, 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 comma, that are reasonably necessary to protect the health, safety.
Correct.
Okay, so we don't have to strike the comma. We just have to insert that after code.
Then I'll second that if he's not striking the comma.
Okay. Well, Alderman Rapino already seconded, so let me read.
Oh, okay.
So I have a motion by Alderman Fillinger and a second by Alderman Rapino to insert after on section B of paragraph 6, after housing standards code, insert and Texas Department, where'd it go? Texas,
Big letters.
oh, I know, but there's a lot of big letters.
Right there.
Okay,
Section 6B.
okay.
Immediately after.
All right. All right, immediately after code, Texas Manufactured Housing Standards Act and the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, TDHCA, manufactured housing rules, subchapter B. Installation standards and device approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Okay. Anything else?
Yes.
All right.
I would like to insert an additional section. Inserting as section 10. And renumbering later sections as applicable. I would like.
Which section did you say, Alderman Fillinger? I'm sorry, I didn't hear
I'm
you.
looking to insert an additional section after 9. Okay,
Thank you, sir.
so section 10 would then, the title would be homes in violation declared public nuisance. Verbiage to be any manufactured or mobile home in violation of this chapter is a public nuisance, and city officers, chief of police, or his officers are authorized to institute any action necessary to restrain or abate such violation. I'm going to give this.
Okay, I do have a motion by Alderman Fillinger. Do I have a second?
A second.
By Alderman Tremblay. Can I read your document?
Sure.
Yeah. To insert a new section to replace, not to replace, but insert a new section to now become section 10, and anything remaining afterwards be renumbered appropriately. And now the new section 10 to state homes in violation declared public nuisance. Any manufactured or mobile home in violation of this chapter is a public nuisance, and city officers, chief of police, or his officers are authorized to institute any action necessary to restrain or abate such violation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Okay. Any other discussion on this?
Section 7, paragraph B.
Okay.
on the last line of that section B, for removal, remove for. Should just say,
Proof of the removal.
proof of the removal,
Okay.
just remove for.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I didn't hear.
So on, no, you're fine. On 7B,
Yes,
strike the word for at the very last sentence, for removal. You got it? For. Just that word for, just strike it. Okay, so I have a motion by Alderman Tremblay and a second by Mayor Pro Tem to strike the word for in section 7B to read includes proof of the removal instead of proof of the for removal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. So how does this work with, we still need to come up with the language for the appeal process? Or for the exemption process? Do we need to?
My motion was to have the city attorney come up with that and bring it back to us at the next meeting, sir.
Okay, so then we'll just, so then at this point, we can move on?
Yes.
well, the one other thing we need to address, okay, we have addressed the appeal, but we have left in the 5-year limitation. And we need to address that.
We're allowed to make an ordinance more restrictive. We can have that 5-year limitation, and we have the exemption process that'll now allow for anything older than 5 years to still be allowed in city if properly approved. So I don't know that we need to change that.
I agree that they do have the ability to still come in via way of appeal or exemption.
Well, no, I think we should add an exemption allowable to the same. So if we just tell people, yeah, no, you can't bring anything over 5 years old. That if they turn around and walk away and then,
Yeah,
you know, because we're struggling with that now. We have already told some people, no, you can't bring that home there, and now we're applying an exemption to another individual. I think we should know that exemption is available.
We can put it on the application or whatever, but I mean, we can give them a copy of the ordinance. Folks read the ordinance. There's other ways they can get it.
I'm looking for the exact.
are you looking for us to put verbiage in there that the secretary will tell the applicant that there's an exemption process if it's denied? I just think that would be ridiculous.
I'm trying to find it.
It's,
I'm going to withdraw my statement.
So it could read there, manufactured homes shall not exceed the minimum age requirements of 5 years from the date of application unless an exemption is applied for or similar.
Page you on.
Oh, I'm sorry, 6A. I don't see no harm in adding with an exemption applied for.
But then why aren't we adding it to everything in here that they can apply for an exemption?
Sure.
There's an exemption paragraph added, and so if they read through to see all the rules they have to follow, they're going to see that there's an exception process. Because what if we miss one of the things that we could apply an exemption to? I think it's just a blanket. This exemption applies to everything in here the way that the attorney's going to write it up, and we just leave it as that.
What if you had said something like manufactured homes exceeding the minimum age requirement of 5 years will require an inspection from the city, right?
I like that.
Something like that.
It sounds good.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I am too. You wanna make a motion?
Do you hear that?
No,
Manufactured homes that exceed the minimum age requirement of 5 years will require an inspection prior to being installed within the city.
Then why do we need the exception paragraph if we add that?
You won't. The exemption, doesn't really address the age.
No, the exemptions, it should be written to apply to anything in here.
I can see that point. Right, in the sense of if the exemption process is in there, anything that is listed word for word in here is a part of the exemption process.
Requirement exemption and inspection.
So within the exemption section, you should add something in there stating that if a mobile exceeding 5 years is denied, an exception may be submitted or something like that under the exception rule.
But then are you trying to imply that none of the other items can get an exemption?
I think the only thing, as far as what other issues would need an exemption other than the age?
I don't know, but by leaving it open, that will prevent us from having to address that later, and the building inspector can address that. If they're filing for an exemption based on it, maybe they need an exemption because they're not going to be able to hook the utilities up for 90 days because CPS isn't going to be able to get out there and get their pole in place. Maybe they need an exemption for that. I mean, who knows, but we're limiting ourselves if we say 5 years, because that's implying that's the only thing the exemption is good for.
Well, you're correct, so maybe we should just strike for 5 years.
Then what's going to stop someone from bringing in a 50-year?
I'm still saying I find nothing in state law that authorizes any city to base a permit on the age of a HUD certified manufactured home.
Well, by way of
Okay.
but by way of the
Where-
exemption,
If they're not buying it from a dealer, they're buying it from an individual. They're not gonna come apply for a permit anyway.
I don't think our city attorney would have allowed us to put that in our ordinance if it was a violation of Texas code.
I think it was put in there,
It's simple. I'm sure she's sitting right there. Just ask her. Are we violating Texas code by having section 6A in our ordinance, ma'am?
I think for a discussion with council is probably more appropriate for executive session. You can use zoning to, have stricter requirements for manufactured homes.
I don't think so.
Okay, I mean, we can take it to executive session when we bring back the write-up to the exemption paragraph and all the other edits.
And the reason I say that is that 5 years is an extension of Waterwood subdivision developers' deed restrictions. We can't enforce deed restrictions. This, in my opinion, is a backdoor attempt to enforce deed restrictions. As I say, all the state laws and the rules that I see only differentiate between new manufactured homes and used certified manufactured homes.
okay, so for the,
They're all manufactured homes. We're not talking about mobile homes. Somebody brings a mobile home.
Well,
And
no, they're absolutely prohibited and they won't move them down the highway.
Okay.
If you want to move a mobile home on the Texas highway, you have to take the undercarriage off and put it on a trailer.
So in this section 6, rather than meeting this minimum age requirement of 5 years, what if you just say all manufactured homes must meet all HUD requirements?
But
Just leave it at that.
because we've already said it has to be a HUD certified manufactured home
Well, then we can delete that.
to be
line.
permitted.
Gone.
Can we take the age requirement discussion to executive session at our next meeting? Because that was the city attorney's recommendation that we talk about that. Because we are gonna have to bring the ordinance back.
You can
It
do it
is.
as consultations with attorneys.
It is. Leslie. You're gonna have to. It is.
Okay,
All right, so we will take the 5 years or newer to executive session.
somebody make a motion for that.
So, well, are we going, okay, I would move that our city attorney prepare a draft ordinance with the amendments that have already been moved and approved and bring it back to council for further discussion.
Second that.
Okay, I got a motion by Alderman Fillinger and a second by Alderman Tremblay to authorize our city attorney to create a draft ordinance with our amendments presented today. And what was it to take it? What'd you say? What was the last part? Was that it?
Bring it back to council.
And to bring it back to council at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Correct.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Right.
All those opposed? Okay. Oh, let's see. Unicode, moving right along. So I did present this to you today. There's certainly a lot to unravel. I want to get the company here to represent, to speak to the product. They weren't able to attend today, so let's table this until our next scheduled meeting. However, the reason for the discussion is by way of Mr. Gonzaga, right? They looked at the website, they found the wrong one. This would put the most recent ordinance at the very top and then show all the amendments from previous. This is something that not only I've wanted, but I've seen it wanted by other council members that are no longer here. And it's something that other cities use.
Plus our police department that really.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing I would ask, because this Municode, there's several organizations in this business. Okay. Yeah, this isn't gonna affect myself or Alderman Patino, but basically the city is going to be in a long-term relationship. I think we should look at 2 or 3 suppliers. Now, having said that, there's no legal requirement because we're not going to exceed $10,000. Okay. But
I agree with Alderman Fillinger. This is gonna be a long-term requirement.
okay.
Say that again, Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree with Alderman Fillinger. It won't hurt to get some other quotes since this is going to be a very long-term relationship.
Now, Elmendorf uses this, so I've been to their website, looked at, used it, real life. They have Google Translate built into the site, so you can choose Spanish, translate, not Google, you can translate on 50 languages if you want, but I think that would be really good for our citizens. Another company, who I'm not going to mention by name right now, does one for another local city. And again, it was decent till I went to translate, and I translated Spanish and did a decent job as far as I know. But then when I tried to return back to English, it wasn't available on the drop down menu. So, you know, we need to talk to people, we need to consider numbers, and we actually need to play with some of their codes online to make, you know, make sure, because like I say, this is gonna be.
This is forever.
Well, it doesn't have to be forever. And you can move because you own it after you buy it. You can move it to another company. but they're gonna charge you the setup fees and all the other things. And, the only thing I do have to say about this is if they offer as an option, gender neutral terms, I think we've done pretty good with that in our ordinances. I can't see extra to have somebody change it from person to
They
what, penguin or whatever the politically correct term is at the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah, if you can help me out with, if anybody knows any other companies, I'll be glad to do the research and try to get some quotes.
American Legal Publishing.
Okay.
So Alderman Fillinger, did you say that the city of Elmendorf is using this particular company?
That's correct.
All right, thank you, sir.
Pleasanton uses a different one.
I think City of Shirts uses this. There was a few that I looked at, and the only reason why I saw it is when I was traveling for work, we just happened to be where that city hall, the building that we were staying at is where the city hall meets, and I saw there, and I was like, let me,
I
We
have
have the
one-
conversation.
I have one other thing
yeah,
that we might want to take under consideration. And again, my dog's not gonna be on fight. However, we have over 6,000 residents now. If anybody has any thought to becoming a home rule city, which has some advantages, we might want to delay codification until we change to a home rule city. Because one of the things that has to be codified is the city charter. So just kind of keep that in your mind.
okay. All right, but I'll get them on the next meeting to kind of talk through it, and then I'll see if I can get some additional quotes, likely not within the next 2 weeks. Because this took some time to put together. I was working with Alderwoman CJ to kind of help me, because I just couldn't find the time for it, but we'll go through it. At least have hers present. I think it was the lady. Okay, so we'll move that to unfinished business. Okay. Agenda item 7C, ordinance 2023-220 Animal Shelter Advisory Committee. I think that was requested to be brought up in the next meeting. Where do we I know, Mayor Pro Tem, I think this was something that you requested. You remember where we stood on this? Or what were we trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
So we were talking about this in terms of the number of animals that we were getting, the lack of ability to take care of cats, and then we moved into the topic of how we previously had arrangements with the Brooks City base animal place there to help us with the fixing our community cats.
Right.
We have a TNR program ordinance in our town that's definitely not being properly implemented. So those two topics came up in terms of that, because I guess we used to have two different animal committees and they were combined together
Right.
at one point and to become just this one, and that we wanted to revisit and see if we could do something with this to help our animal control officers get after the community cat issue, because there was something in place in the past. Other aldermen have been around a lot longer, but I know Alderwoman CJ Walker was very much involved with it in the past. But it was in terms of how can we help with the cat problem.
Okay. And
Mr. Mayor, before we address further, I need a 5-minute recess. Because I want to be involved in this discussion.
all right, it's 7:58. We will take a 5-minute recess. All right, the time is now 8:06. We are back in session. Back to agenda item 7C. Now, speaking to your point, Mayor Pro Tem, we do have the agenda item 2019-135 trap neuter release program on the docket. So is that where we really want to address our time?
Well, let's let Alderman Fillinger, because I'm sure he was around and has some history on this and was part of to combine this and may have some insight into how this might help us.
Okay, to address your initial introduction, in fact, the Animal Care Advisory Committee worked very closely with the people that were doing the trap, neuter, and return. And that committee was disbanded by ordinance. The trap, neuter, and release program was transferred to the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, which has yet to have a single meeting since it has been in existence. Okay.
Okay, do you have some insight into why we haven't been able to make any progress with this on this ordinance, sir?
Correct. So we need to address who is the chairperson of the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee? And the answer is we don't have one. Okay. So who's running it? And the answer is no one. So we need an elected official to step up and say, okay, I'll take that hot potato that nobody wants. Okay, we need to address the need for a licensed veterinarian. We have to have a licensed veterinarian attend 3 meetings of the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee per year. Now, that means we need to budget and pony up some money, because a licensed veterinarian should not be asked to come to a meeting after hours out of the goodness of his heart.
What about the representative from an animal welfare organization that's mentioned in section 3? Do we have that?
We never appointed one, because we've had several people step up and say, I'll do this, but we've never had another appointment other than our animal control officer as a person that works daily at a animal shelter. So we have an elected official, an animal control officer. We have to have, by this ordinance, 2 other people. Now, my thought is that we should have 2 at a minimum citizen volunteers on this committee, because
the membership paragraph only mentions 4 individuals.
That makes 4 individuals. Okay.
Right.
The chair of a committee doesn't normally vote unless there's a tie. So 3 of those people, first of all, 3 people have to be in attendance to hold a meeting, because you have to have more than half of the committee to have a quorum. Okay. The veterinarian only has to attend 3 meetings. The committee can meet as many times as the chair feels like it needs to meet. So we have kind of 2 issues. Anything that the Animal Control Advisory Committee was doing has been shut down, because all those duties were given to the Shelter Committee. And the Shelter Committee has basically not done anything.
Isn't this Animal Shelter Advisory Committee required by law or something?
Absolutely, you can't have an animal shelter without one.
I think we can figure out the licensed vet part pretty easily. I have an idea.
And I'm in agreement, sir.
I think we can figure out a citizen pretty easily, I think.
Well, we don't have a citizen list.
Well, but it does say one represent, well,
The ordinance doesn't require a citizen at this point, but if we post the information of the meeting according to the Open Meetings Act, which is required by this ordinance, then the citizens can always attend.
yeah, but it does say the city council may additionally appoint any other person it deems necessary for the effectiveness of the committee. So, I mean, a citizen could be deemed necessary for the effectiveness.
Well,
Yes, sir.
I think actually that adding two citizens would make it much more effective. Because we're dealing with animal shelter issues right now, day by day. I don't think 3 meetings a year is going to work. If we had a couple of citizens, we could hold a legitimate, because we add 2 citizens, then we're talking about 7 people. You need 4 for a quorum. So we could have a monthly meeting, and currently that would not be a bad plan. We could have a monthly meeting and address things like the TNR program.
I think we should allow the details of the meetings to be worked out by those committee members. I think we need to focus on identifying who should be on the committee and appoint one of those members to be the chair, because it doesn't say the older person has to be the chair of the committee.
Okay, I'm just saying that, I think you're gonna need a couple of citizens to get a quorum to find these people.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, that's my thought. I additionally, in the purpose and general duties of the committee, I think we ought to address, like the park committee and like the former animal control, seek means of funding or contributions, volunteers to work at the shelter. Occasionally we ask for volunteers, but we don't make a sustained public appeal for people to work with the animals in the shelter. And like I say, I think currently we need to get this committee going and but initially I think they should have at a minimum monthly meetings.
Sir, unless you intend to modify the ordinance to add that, I think it's going to be up to whoever we appoint to the committee to set that up, is all I'm saying.
Okay, well, then we're gonna have a committee of 1 or a committee of 2. But, that.
Or we come back to the next meeting
Okay.
and come up with recommendations for who's going to form this committee.
I think that's a good idea. I can post it on Nextdoor over the next few weeks. I think we might be able to get some traction on it.
Well,
I agree, but I think talking about the details of the meeting is irrelevant when we don't have the details of who the members are, because that's where we failed in the past. We didn't have the members to have the meeting. So I think we should focus on getting those members identified and appointed by the council, and then have that committee report back to the council regularly on how they're doing, regardless of how often they're meeting.
I think that's fair. So do we just want to action coming up with some recommendations over the next 2 to 4 weeks?
Okay.
Yes, sir. You indicated you had some ideas for the licensed veterinarian. I think we can ask Ashley and Cassandra to see if they have recommendations on an animal welfare organization that they work with locally, and then ask one of the 2 of them to volunteer to be the person that daily works with the animal shelter.
I think Cassandra would be a great fit for that.
I would agree, but I would recommend that we allow them to
Not to
concur.
decide. Okay. So is that a motion?
Do we need a motion to just to keep this on the agenda next time? Because it's not resolved. We don't have the names right now.
No. Then
Because
let's,
that's what we need to do, is just keep
Okay.
it on the agenda for topics for discussion next time with for the request that everybody just comes back. I don't think we need a motion to ask people to come back with names.
Okay, then we can table this for the next regularly scheduled meeting to be discussed, hopefully with the recommendation on names. Okay. Along those lines, discuss under possible action of ordinance 2019-135. Do we want to figure out the committee before we discuss 2019-135?
So just to confirm what Alderman Philodrome was saying, the responsibility of this ordinance falls under that committee based on the combination of the previous two committees. Is that correct, Alderman Fillinger?
Yep.
All right, yes, sir. Then I would recommend that we have that committee, once formed, come back with any recommended changes or edits to this ordinance.
Okay. All right, then I don't have enough information for our executive session for VIA. And so I'm waiting on them to respond. So I'd like to table this until our next regularly scheduled meeting as well. Which would also then include agenda item F.
Can we have a public discussion, sir?
Yeah, we sure can.
Agenda item 7, yeah. Just want to give you a heads up.
Oh, we do. No, go ahead.
Okay. The Texas Comptroller has a page up about the various sales tax collected by MTAs, and we call it VIA, but it's actually San Antonio MTA. VIA includes another portion that is just San Antonio. So the San Antonio MTA, their sales tax rate is 0.5%. Okay. This has been effective since January 1st, 1978. Okay. 47 years. People in rural Bexar County have been paying VIA taxes for 47 years. Participating cities and areas today are most everybody you would suspect. Okay. Most of the little cities in the county and all of the unincorporated areas of the county are paying 1.5% sales tax to VIA. However, the city of Fair Oaks Ranch withdrew the San Antonio MTA effective September 30th, 2008, and the city of Bon Army withdrew from the San Antonio MTA effective September 30th, 2009. Additionally, they list a whole lot of cities in Bexar County, but they don't list Gray Forest. So the only thing I can think of is when they had the election authorizing the service area for MTA, Gray Forest said, no, not us. Because at some point prior to 1978, they had to have an election to authorize the taxes. But Gray Forest is not listed as ever being a part of the MTA.
Who's Gray Forest?
Gray Forest is out towards Helotes.
It's at the far north end of the county. And
Okay, I don't understand how any of these cities are relevant to us.
well, what I'm saying is we tried to repeal the tax a few years ago. We had it on the ballot, and then VIA came in and said, well, that's fine, but you still owe your portion of the debt, which was like $60 million. So they're gonna collect sales tax out here for until our debt is paid. So at that point, although the initiative was on the ballot, the mayor and council members said, oh no, let's not do this. Because we've had less than a year of VIA service in those 47 years. But currently, it would take 100, 200 years to pay off $6 million debt on collecting sales tax.
Why do we owe them anything if they're not providing service to us? I don't
Well, once
understand.
we withdraw from it, there is no possibility of us ever receiving service. Okay, when we went to withdraw, then VIA said, well, we'll work with you. And they did for a short period of time and said, well, there's just not demand out there. We can't continue. So I'm in favor of withdrawing, but I think we need to talk to Von Army and Fair Oaks Ranch. Yeah. To the attorney, you may hate me even more than that. At this point, I believe both Fair Oaks Ranch and Von Army use Martin DeVarna as their attorney. Maybe he knows something we don't. He's married.
So that's why I wanted to table it, because I'm trying to figure out what is the debt that we owe. The last time we did this, I think the balance was 1.8 million or something like that we owed.
Where does that come from?
Well, that comes from our portion of the $60 million that he was talking about that VIA took out that they're carrying across.
No, they're billions of dollars, not millions.
Okay, but that's, so I've already reached out to San Antonio MTA and Via Trans and trying to get what is our collection, what is our share, as well as how do we pay that, right? Does it continue to get deducted from our sales tax to half of the 1%? And we don't see anything difference, but eventually it pays off and then we exit and we collect that, or we don't pay that anymore. So that's what I'm still waiting for a response for from.
Why do we owe?
But how did we incur that debt? What did we do to owe them anything? Because they don't come down here.
Because we're part of, we were
Because we're
part of
participating in it. Due to the fact that
You've only
while
been
we
in
were a
existence for
rural
7
area,
years.
So the entire Bear County is responsible for it. By way of Sandy Oaks, now we are responsible for our share of it.
But our share should be practically nothing because they've only provided us service for 1 year. How did they calculate how much we owed them?
That's what
actually,
we're trying to figure
I
out.
think our share should only be calculated from when we became a city.
Sure.
But yeah,
And should only be based on the year that we had service. They're not doing anything for us.
Yep.
and as a matter of fact, if you go to their website, we are not, even on their website, we are not in their service area.
Yeah.
They have a map where they show their service area. We're not part of their service area.
So my only counter argument to the whole idea is that San Antonio's at 1604 and 37, and they're building apartments on Southton Road, and eventually we're gonna get service. Now,
Yeah,
how
eventually.
eventually, I don't know, but. there's
But
a
if they're not
possibility.
even claiming to service us, why are they billing us?
Good question, but that's what I was,
Because they can.
that's what I'm waiting for an answer on, so.
No, it's not Pam.
Yeah.
Oh, they get paid.
Yeah, they're getting paid no matter
Can't
what.
go back in.
All right,
Does Cassandra, our city attorney, do you know anything about this and how they can charge us for services? Not, that's like taxation without representation.
Well, the city opted in to the sales tax, so the voters.
Okay, so
voted
we agreed.
to be subject.
Got it.
Yeah. And then a few years ago, it was on the ballot to be withdrawn and did not pass, so we're still subject to the taxation. Or the sales tax.
So let me
Okay.
try to get some more information and then we can bring it back.
Yeah, but if we withdraw, we can never get services later, even if the city continues to expand and we're eventually within their service area, they won't service us.
Correct. So because San Antonio is now so close, that's my argument as to why I don't want to do it, right? Because I think it's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
And if they build a park and ride just down the street and our citizens can go utilize it.
Whether we pay tax.
Well, whether we pay tax or not, yeah, you're right. So
Because, you know, if
It's
you
a parking
drive
lot.
into San Antonio,
you can use it no matter what. So yeah, it's a good
If
point.
we drive to Elmendorf, we can ride the bus from Elmendorf.
Yeah,
We'll just never have a bus stop within the city of Sandy Oaks.
right, right. And I always feel like, man, we have the perfect location because all that bus needs to do is jump off of the access road at 122 and jump right back on from the Valero or wherever it's at.
And
It's
there's a parking lot at 181.
Yeah. So let me try to find some more information about what we would owe and how we would pay it, and then we can bring it back up for discussion.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else? If not, I need it.
move to return.
All right, it is now 8:28. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Monica.
Yes, sir. Thank you.